My levels thing, I ask people what they had for breakfast, and then that gets them on like a couple sentences of talking about what they ate that morning.
I had some sort of poached sous vide egg thing with some not great bread. What did you have for breakfast?
It was like an egg scramble with some like vegetables in it, with a turkey sausage patty, and like a sriracha mayo on a brioche bun. Brioche.
What do you feel about brioche buns?
I love it. I love brioche. Actually, I used to bake brioche at one of my old jobs, and brioche is a lot of fun to make, and it's delicious to eat.
Is it something you can do at home?
Yeah, absolutely. Brioche isn't too hard to make. It's just a lot of eggs. Like
what's the most important part about making brioche buns?
One, it's the eggs. Like, you need to put a shit ton of eggs in there. And then it's like the proofing. Like with all baking, it's proofing. And actually, the real thing is traditional brioche, there's like a certain way you have to like roll, put the dough in tins. So they have little knobs on the top when they bake. And then you crush them in salt.
I like a brioche bun on a burger.
Yeah.
I understand why people don't like it, but I feel like they pass judgment on a lot of the burger just on the bun. Do you feel like that is true?
What do people not like about brioche buns? Like, what's the argument?
Oh, they're too greasy. Oh, it's really just too greasy, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because a brioche bun's mostly eggs and butter. So I think that's what kind of lends them nice, because they have a nice soft shell and they're really doughy but not dense, right? Like, you know how some like Kaiser rolls are sort of like, I'm from the East Coast too, and so where I grew up, you would do potato buns. And have you ever had like a burger on a potato bun?
No, that's nuts.
It's like potato bread, but they make that.
I don't know what potato bread is.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah, it's good.
Do you guys not have yeast on the East Coast or something?
No, they have yeast. It's just a style of bread. They do potato buns.
And it tastes like potatoes?
No, it doesn't taste like potatoes. It's just, I don't know, it has like a thicker texture to it than your average bread.
Oh, so there's no potatoes in a potato bun?
No, there's potatoes in it, but it's not like chunks of potatoes. It's like they whip it, and then it's part of folded into the flour and the yeast and all that.
Do you know what type of potatoes they use for that?
I don't know. Yukon Golds? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't. Maybe that matters. Maybe it's not red potatoes. I know that.
So what's your name and what's your podcast?
My name is John Lindvay, and I do a podcast called Big Sushi FM, even though I've been on a break for a little bit. It used to be me and 3 people, but now it's just me, and so I think that's a lot of the reason why I've slowed down.
So how many episodes have you done?
Close to 300. Yeah, I've been doing it for about 3 years. I was doing one a week, and then when I would do when shows would come up, I'd do a series of smaller ones. But I think numbered episodes, I'm like in the 200s. But if you were to count all of the files that I've released, it's over 300.
Wow. Did you start at number 0?
So when the podcast first started, it was me and a few friends just like doing your standard bullshit game podcast, like, hey, what have you been playing? And just bullshitting that way. And that was like the first maybe year. And then on I think when we switched over to numbered episodes, which was episode around 50, I did my first developer interview, which is the direction that we were going to go anyhow. But like that first series was just like, hey, how do you record a podcast? Let's make sure a podcast doesn't sound like shit. And so about 50. So I've done at least 250 developer interviews.
How have you evolved your interview technique over those 250? Like, what are some things you try and do, some things you try and avoid when interviewing developers? I try to
avoid asking for when it's going to be released, because that's a dumb question to ask a developer while they're in development, because that's such a moving target. Try to stop. The other big thing is you stop asking them to tell me like what the game is, like moving away from just having them pitch me the game, like, and just talk more about like why they're making the game, and actually playing it so that way I can say, hey, this is like, I've picked up on these things that you're talking about, or these seems like you're interested in these things, and go from there. Like, just make some assumptions and then have the guests answer, defend, confirm, deny, all those things. The biggest thing though is really learning how to listen and not interrupt. Like, allow them to just go, and then learn how to sort of gently steer a conversation without trying to force things, or knowing when to follow up. I feel like a lot of times, especially on developer interview podcasts, a developer will say something super interesting, but like the interviewer's so like on, they're like, okay, I want to ask this question, they want to ask this question, I want to ask this question, and then after they ask the second question, the developer will say something really interesting, and then they won't follow up. They'll just get onto, okay, so now on to the next thing that I have planned to ask you. And that just comes from not listening.
So how do you find how do you go about getting the interviews? Like, I always find, especially with like this, I don't really like interviewing people without talking to them first.
Sure.
So I usually try and interview people that I meet like during these trips and shows. So how do you go about it?
So when I first started, it was just a lot of cold calls. Like I was just like, hey, I like your game. I think this is interesting. Would you like to talk? And then after you do that for the first 2 years, you get some notoriety, so people start knowing who you are. But a lot of times, for me, it's not so much knowing the person. I like knowing what they make first. Because I think that's where the conversation starts. It's not so much like I love learning about a person just through conversation. And if I learn all that stuff off the mic, I don't think it's as illuminating than if it was on the microphone. So a lot of times it just starts from like when it's at a show, I'll play the game first. Like, hey, do you have like 10, 15 minutes to sit down and jam? And then but for me, I like to do longer form interviews. So that 10, 15 minute is just like a short thing just to get me to know them. And then after I wrap that up, then I'll schedule something in the future like, hey, would you be interested in like sitting down for an hour and like talking more in depth about X, Y, or Z? Do
you do them remotely as well?
For the majority of the existence of Big Sushi, it's been remotely. But now that I'm in the Bay Area, it's a little bit easier to, especially when things like GDC happen, I could like schedule like, hey, you're going to be in town, like let's go get coffee and sit down and talk for an hour.
How do you find the remote interviews?
Again, I think remote interviews are really important to not interrupt the person you're interviewing and let them just talk because of Skype and delays, and depending on what you're using, the software will like gate the other person, so it really make the conversation really choppy. And so at that point, it's more about making sure that your questions are pretty succinct, and then also just listening to the person and making sure that you're letting them just have the platform. Because I think the biggest thing for a lot of people that do podcasts is they start doing it is like, I want to do my podcast because I think I got good questions and I'm cool and I want to talk to all these cool people. But one of the things I quickly realized is that the show's really not about me. Like I am just there as a vehicle to ask questions to these people. But the show is more about the person, the guest. And you make the guest the king and you give them the time to speak. That's when like the real magic happens. So a lot of times it's about learning how to remove yourself from the conversation, but just be there enough to push things along.
What'd you use to like record remote interviews? Because I did my first one remotely, and that was a bit of a pain to set up. Like I had to set up all these virtual mixers.
What were you using?
I was using this weird thing. It was like called like Banana something.
So when I first started doing it, I actually had a more complicated rig because quality was really important to me. So I actually had two laptops set up. I had a MacBook with GarageBand running, which then I had a mixing board which had like a small, 4-channel mixer, which would take my XLR microphone. It would then have my headphone jack in there so I could hear the call, and then that would get fed into the MacBook through a USB amp, whatever, like a small USB amplifier. But then I'd have a second laptop, which would actually be running Skype, and then I'd run basically an FX loop from the board that would carry the microphone back to that laptop, so that way the caller could hear me, and then take all the audio and put it on a separate channel, so that way I could normalize my microphone between them without having to do it through like weird virtual mixing boards, and then pump all that into SoundCloud, or not into SoundCloud, but into GarageBand, and then edit it from there. The only downside to that is that because I'm pumping it all into to two channels, I can't separate the guest from so that way I have to do good mixing with the board, and if I don't do good mixing, then it screws up the audio. What I also do now when I'm doing it is I've done the virtual thing set up through GarageBand where I can actually have Skype be its own channel, the microphone be its own channel, and have it all communicate back and forth. And that's nice for editing, because that way if the guest is quiet, I can pump them up, or if I'm too loud, I can bring myself down without worrying about the sound too much.
Yeah, I did all mine through that, like a virtual audio mixer, so I could take my voice and the audio coming through the computer and run it through a microphone, like a simulated microphone, and then record that, and then I would level it before getting it to Audacity,
right,
and then record it. It turned out okay. I mean, ideally I wouldn't want to do these remotely, but it was like I backed this rapper on Kickstarter, so I had to interview him because I got to design my own tier. So I had to do that because that's a dumb idea.
Yeah.
What was the weirdest interview you've done on your podcast?
The weirdest interview?
Yeah.
I need more criteria. Like define weird.
Did you ever interview somebody kind of outside your normal wheelhouse of people you'd interview, and like interview publisher or something like?
Yeah,
like stray a little bit further than, I assume it's mostly big name developers and indie developers that are people you interview.
Yeah, we've done publishers. I did Cartoon Network publishers. I did Devolver. I had an awesome conversation with Nigel Lowry from Devolver. I've done musicians. I've done. I did a bus. I guess the one that's sort of outside the realm of indie games or game development was I did a busking band from New York City called You Bred Raptors. I did an interview with them.
Like bread as in like potato bread?
No, like bread as in breeding. Like it is a quote from Jurassic Park, like you bred raptors with a question mark, like you bred raptors. And they're a really, really good busking band in New York City. It's like a...
Are they still active?
Yeah. You can check them out on YouTube. I know Pete Raines is the bassist, and like I don't know if he's like the lead, but he's one of the guy I interviewed.
That's a good name. That's probably one of the better names of people you've interviewed.
But probably, yeah. What else? One of my very first interviews that I actually did for a paper back in my hometown is I interviewed Ben, I forget his last name, but one of the creators of Cards Against Humanity, and I interviewed him. I called him up on a Sunday when he was back in California. Did a remote interview with him over Skype while he was like on the side of a road in California, and that was cool.
Cool. What's the name of that podcast again?
My podcast?
Yeah.
It's Big Sushi FM.
How, with that name, did you run into a lot of like brand confusion?
So the name Big Sushi comes from like just an old forums that me and my friends used to have from college, where we would just talk about like video games, movies, books, comics, anime, whatever. And so it just sort of stuck because I sort of liked the fact that it's sort of nonsense. Like I didn't want like indie game podcasts, you know,
Game Zone or something.
Games plus interviews, because. I mean, I think that might help. That might help for like SEO shit, right? But I just liked the name Big Sushi, so I just stuck with it.
You mentioned that you did an interview for a school paper. What was the name of the school paper?
It wasn't a school paper. It was a local paper. So
what was the name of the local paper?
It's called the Erie Reader.
Where was that local to?
Erie, Pennsylvania. It's the only alt paper in the city. So.
What's an alt paper?
So you have like your main like Erie Times, right? That's like your main paper. That's like all the like major journalists, stuff like that. And so all papers are sort of like the Chicago Reader, which is what the Erie Reader is based itself off of. And that's more for like arts, culture, music,
activism, probably.
No, I mean not so much activism. I mean it does get into politics, like local politics and things like that. But it's just not like your standard. Like they're more there to sort of promote the community, promote what's happening in the city and the entertainment and things like that, and not just be like school board rejected X vote or X thing they wanted to pass. I mean, they still cover that stuff, but it's more about, just providing an alternative view rather than like the traditional press, even though like that term traditional press is sort of like a dying thing, because what does that even mean anymore?
Do you have any copies of the interviews you wrote in paper form?
I mean, they're all published, so you can.
You don't have like a folder full of all your old...
Oh, like actual physical copies of them? No, I had the first few, but I stopped collecting them because I wrote for them for about. Actually, I just stopped writing for them a few months ago. It's because I did every 2 weeks I did a column for them for about two and a half years. So I liked it because it was just a good way to stay sharp with my writing skills. Working with an editor, it's important.
Yeah, no, that's a interesting thing to maintain, especially as you don't live there anymore. Yeah,
I mean, well, because like my column was more about like tech stuff, right? So it was like what's going on in the tech, like, and like what's exciting, what's new, and so I did a couple of stuff. I every once in a while I would dive more into the political stuff, especially when like the TPP and like a lot of those things were starting to get affected, or net neutrality, stuff like that. But it's more like, hey, here's like I'm sure you guys are all hearing about VR. Like, let me tell you about what's going on with VR. Here's the Oculus, here's the Vive, here's like the score. This is what's going on.
So thanks for being on the Question Bus. Do you have anything else you want to plug?
Plug?
Or say?
What do I want to plug? I have no idea, man. I mean, Darkest Dungeon's okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're managing the community of Darkest Dungeon, so.
Yeah, that's been a treat.
Do you just have like a button that just plays an applicable narration while you manage the community? No.
Actually, the community's great. It's just awesome because it's one of those things where they just want so much and you want to give them all that stuff, but there's just like the realities of like development. It's like we have other things we have to be working on, and while what you're saying is cool and we would love to do that, it's just we don't have the bandwidth for it. It's really funny how like even like people don't. A lot of times, players of games, they don't quite understand the size of the studios that are making them, and like we have one artist does everything. So when you say like, hey, let's get new monsters, like this is what that really means. Like let me break it down for you.
So no Twitters.
Oh, Twitters? Sure. I mean, I'm at Fight Strife, which is my handle since I was 11 years old.
That's a pretty good 11-year-old. Like to ride with that is pretty good.
Yeah, that was back from Counter-Strike days. That was Fight Strife. Which it's fighting, which is great. This is great for being a community manager. And then Big Sushi is at Big Sushi FM. The website's www.bigsushifm. We're also on SoundCloud. That's where we keep everything. So if you do want to hear any of the 300 episodes, you can go there and check them out. A lot of good guests on there.
Who's the biggest name?
The biggest name?
Like length of name.
Oh, like longest name?
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably some like the Danish or like those like developers from over there.
Okay, who's the person you've interviewed that would have the most Twitter followers?
Oh, probably Rami, right? Rami has a lot of followers.
I don't know who I don't know.
Rami Ismail?
No, I know who Rami Ismail is, but I just don't know who all you've interviewed.
I think he might have the most followers out of everyone I've interviewed, just because he's pretty active on Twitter. Yeah. So yeah, probably him.